bounced back from that fire and we rebuilt the city and laid claim to inventing the skyscraper in the process. We showed the city off by hosting the World's Fair, the Colombian Exposition, in 1893. Now, Daniel Burnham, architect in charge of housing all the exhibits, had to create an entire temporary city. It was called the White City to house the exhibits. And Burnham learned so much about urban planning from that temporary city for the World's Fair, he would make it a reality with the Plan of Chicago, a document making the river the focal point of the city with grand and noble architecture rising up along its banks. So my friends, we literally willed modern Chicago into existence. Now you can look at those two things, the fire and the fair. Some very important events in Chicago. The fire took it down with the fair. That fair city was based on the architecture of Greece and Rome. It was a style called City Beautiful or Beaux-Arts. So it was like walking into Venice, classical prototypes done on a grand scale. And that influenced architecture in many ways in Chicago. Now, we are going to pass under a number of Chicago's movable bridges, inspired by the bridges of Paris, France, and known as the Trunnion Bascule. Bascule from the French for seesaw, each leaf turning on axle, trunnion, pin, counterweight, move, counterweight with motor. This is how the bridges open. It's also our opening aerobics workout. Ready? Let's go. Okay, enough exercise in this heat. Let's get right into buildings. 45 degrees to your left, 3 towers become one grand skyscraper. The Hotel St. Regis and the residences at the St. Regis Hotel. Coming to us from a young woman architect, Jeannie Gang. Her company is called Studio Gang. And you see the highest tower? Now she topped that out in 2020 at 1,198 feet. And that makes it the 3rd tallest building in the city of Chicago. But you know what's cooler than that? It gave our Jeannie Gang a title. It's the tallest building in the entire world by a woman-led architectural firm. Yeah, pretty cool right there. Look at the lobby box and the flow of the towers. Jeannie said her inspiration came from a frustrum, a crystal formation you would find if you looked at fluorite or maybe my birthstone, a sapphire. Kind of resembles an hourglass, yeah? Unless you survived the 1960s like I did, and then you'll see a lava lamp in that same design. There are 6 different tints of blue, green, and clear glass, evoking the unique colors of the Chicago River water. The water has an interesting tint because it's a very, very low algae content right down here. Now, can you block the sun with the palm of your hand so you can see the highest tower? And notice 2 floors are exposed. This is a blow-through floor to confuse the wind. Chicago's nickname is the Windy City. An 80-mile-an-hour nor'easter off the lake wants to beat this building up so you trick the wind. Now, my hero, Bucky Fuller, who gave the world the geodesic dome, that's Epcot Center at Disney World down in Florida. Bucky taught at Southern Illinois University and would sometimes start his 6-hour lectures with 3 words: the wind sucks. There is no such thing as a blowing wind. Wind is a high-pressure zone seeking low pressure. If you have a problem with wind in your building, here's a tip. Put a hole in it, and the wind is just going to whistle right through to the other side. Now, looming in front of us is the current 2nd tallest building in Chicago, Trump International Hotel and Tower. Adrian Smith Architect, Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, 2009. Adrian Smith, the architect, introduces the style we call contextualism. Architecture doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything is relative. Be a good neighbor. Pay attention to your building site. So note the use of dramatic stair-like patios, the cutaways. You see how you see the cutaways in the building? Everywhere there's a cutaway, it's corresponding to the height of a neighboring building. You got this oversized building moving into the neighborhood. Be cool, baby. Don't overtake that neighborhood. Slide in, be a part of it. Now, the gray box on your right is a style which needs no introduction. Modernism, the boxes which fill our modern cities. Modernism was born at the Bauhaus, the famous art school in 1920s Germany, merging industry and art. The Bauhaus architects were utilitarian and functional. They celebrated structure, materials. They like to say the brick is another teacher. So they love structure, but you know what they hated on a building? Decoration, really ornamentation. That was bourgeois, dishonest. So modernism stripped the building down to its structure. Are you ready? I will sum up modernism with only 3 words. Skeleton, skin, space. Skeleton is the frame holding the building up, skin is the glass curtain wall, and space most of the time is a box, a square. The most intriguing building with mosque like Morris, Yellow Onions, and Dome Creeks is on the right. The Hotel Intercontinental, built in 1929 by the Shriners as the Medina Athletic Club. somebody having the mistaken idea that that yellow ball and chimney would make a great landing pad for airships like the Goodyear blimp. That's the worst idea in a city crammed with skyscrapers I've ever heard. They never landed any blimps up there. Let us just say that steampunk dream would die with the crash of the Hindenburg. And after that, blimps, dirigibles, and zeppelins, except for lead, all fell out of favor. London has Big Ben, Paris the Eiffel Tower, Chicago has the clock tower of the Wrigley Building, 1921 in front of you, commissioned by chewing gum king William Wrigley Jr., who was a young man who was selling juicy fruit gum at the World's Fair of 1893. So he brings that city beautiful style home, classic idea. The clock tower modeled on the 11th century Giralda Tower in Sevilla in Spain. And on our right, from my favorite London architect, the Gherkin man, Sir Norman Foster, the minimal Apple computer store with a wall that's hardly there and a roof that evokes an Apple laptop. Later on, do your fancy shopping with a hoi polloi on one magnificent mile of Michigan Avenue, which we call in the French manner Boulevard Mich, as it was inspired by the Grand Boulevards of Paris. Burnham's idea, Chicago should be Paris on the prairie. But hey, what happened to the bridge? Let's take it to the bridge. The bridge is named DuSable Bridge. In Chicago, you don't forget where you came from. Jean-Baptiste Pont du Sable was a French-speaking fur trader from Haiti, and he was the first Chicagoan. He established a fur trading empire right up there in 1779. After the tour, find this statue, take a selfie with our founder. 45 degrees off the left bow. The revivalism of the World's Fair lives on in the Jewelers Building with cupola dome and classical water tanks, inspired by a 15th century Italian monastery, the Certosa de Pavia. It was built here for the diamond trade in 1926. Look closely at those water tanks, movie fans. Remember Christian Bale as Batman in the movie Batman Begins. At the end of the film, he sits on that water tank surveying his domain and was probably thinking, wow, Chicago makes a way cool Gotham City. Now, directly ahead of you, there's a building with a Greek temple A-frame style roof. This is 77 Westwacker Drive from Spanish architect Ricardo Bofill. The building seems to be confused. Not quite sure if it wants to be a modern skyscraper or an ancient Greek temple. And that kind of double coding is okay in this style, which is called postmodernism. After 30 years of boxes, people got bored. Postmodernists became the DJs of the architectural world, sampling whatever architectural style they felt like, and turning a building into a mixtape, a mashup. Now, pure modernism is represented by the black box on our right, AMA Plaza, 1971. From the father of modernism in America, remember this name, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, third director of the Bauhaus School in Germany, coming to Chicago in 1938, and from the Illinois Institute of Technology, spreading his minimalist modern, or as he said, less is more philosophy around the globe. Now, there was a rebel student studying with me at the Bauhaus, Bertrand Goldberg from Chicago. He did not share all his teachers' love of boxy buildings. Goldberg liked the circle. He felt that would bring people together more. So when Goldberg does a modern building, get ready. Circle gets the square with the Marina City Towers earning their nickname the Corn Pop Tower since 1967. Goldberg referred to this as curvilinear flower form, beginning with a stem to house the elevators and utilities, building the rings like petals from the base up. You will note this is a complete city with 4 restaurants, a bowling alley, a swimming pool, a bank, office space, and your living space upstairs. And you know what else? It embraces the river. It turns to the water as opposed to turning its back on it. And that was revolutionary in the 60s when this building went up. We had the railroad. We had forgotten the river. But people who work downtown wanted to live downtown. So Bertrand Goldberg called this a city within the city. Everything's at your fingertips. Oh, look at the parking garage, though. I forgot to warn you. If you move here, you will never park your own car again. Only the professional valets are allowed to park the cars. I think you understand why. What happens if you go in reverse by mistake? Yes, into the water. Not pretty. The river is 15 to 24 feet deep. And friends, the Trunnion Bascule bridges are lifting today. The bridge is inspired by the bridges of Paris. The bridge lifts happen every Saturday and Wednesday for about the next 6 weeks, because all the sailboats are going home to their dry docks. Now on our right, we're looking at the old Reed Murdoch warehouse, a prime example of adaptive reuse, meaning take an old building and give it new life. So 1913 warehouse thrives today as an industrial-sized restaurant called River Roast. And guess what? It's also home to Encyclopedia Britannica. Even in the age of the internet, they're still around. Notice how the profile is much more horizontal than vertical, because the architect George Siemens, like the great Frank Lloyd Wright, remember that name, was associated with the style that came right out of the Midwest called Prairie School architecture. Having a lack of mountains, architects evoke the flatness of the plains in the style of their buildings. Okay, friends, listen in. I'll tell you the truth of how we became birthplace to the skyscraper. We didn't really have a choice in the matter. After the fire, the city passed an ordinance, said, okay, that's it. You are not allowed to build with wood in downtown Chicago, leaving you with masonry brick. But that load-bearing exterior brick wall is going to get 6 inches wider every time you go a floor higher, eating up your floor space. Enter the Civil War bridge builder William LeBaron Jenney, familiar with iron and steel. In 1885, for his home insurance building, Jenney introduces, in the first time in Chicago, a skeletal iron and steel frame like every modern skyscraper, leading to the fertile period we call the first Chicago School of Architecture. And there's a simple example from 1912. So you're seeing the major change I'm talking about? From a load-bearing wall to a skeleton. And it was only a hop, skip, and a jump from those Chicago school buildings to the soaring wonders of glass and steel going 100 stories we have today. On our right, the style that really put the roar in the roaring 20s, Art Deco, the 1930 Chicago merchandise mark. Art Deco is a streamlined, angular, sleek, machine-made look, came out of Paris, 1925. When I say Art Deco, think of the writer F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby, The Jazz Age. Ooh, I'm doing gram hands. In the early 1920s, America was in a period of unbridled optimism and prosperity. The country was moving forward without end. The sleek look of Art Deco reflected that. Largest structure in America prior to completion of the Pentagon, 4,600 windows, over 7 miles of hallways. Until 2008, it had its own zip code. Commissioned by the Marshall Field Department Store of Chicago for $38 million. They dreamed of a giant wholesale market, woke up to the Great Depression, and by 1945 let it go for only $13 million when Joseph Kennedy picked it up, the father of our late president. Joe walks inside and realizes you could fit 73 American football fields inside those walls. So much space is perfectly suited for the furniture design industry. Buyer showrooms upstairs, trade shows like the design show Neocon in between, retail stores for us. Well, welcome to the beginning of Chicago, friends. Wolf Point, the confluence of the 3 branches of the river. We approach from the east, North Branch right, South Branch left, and the birthplace of downtown has become a showplace for our grandest architecture. Since 1983, the Curb building is the Nuveen building, 333 West Rocket Drive. That, my friends, is contextualism. Everything's about the river. That building set the bar high, said, yo, you build around me, you bring your A game. And everyone has, from the Wolf Point Tower complex on our right, Wolf Point South, already named Salesforce. The same company did that thing in the San Francisco Bay Area of California. In front of us, the red sculpture by Santiago Calatrava of Spain nicely anchors River Point, whose arch, you might have guessed, was inspired by the great arch of St. Louis, Missouri, our neighbors to the south. Now, let's look at the arch and then look at the top of the building, how it's complemented with an inverted parabola. See that scoop? Little kids looked at this entire building and understood. They gave it the nickname, the Hot Pockets Sandwich Building, because it looks like the microwave heating sleeve for a popular American pastry. And friends, I'm serious about this. When you give a building a nickname, you realize your brain is working. What are you seeking? You are seeking the Gestalt common ground. A building's nickname will always be an image from your personal experience applied to a new shape. And just like those little kids, do you know, a famous architect and structural engineer in Chicago got an image stuck inside their head one day of a bundle of sticks that you would tie together for string. So what did they do with that image? They turned it into the tallest building on the planet Earth for the next 24 years. But that, my friends, is the Sears Willis Tower, and you will have great photos of it when we visit the South Branch later. Right now we're going to tour Littleton North Branch, a working industrial river in the midst of a residential renaissance. The salmon-colored building on our left, Harry Weiss, 1981, Fulton House, 4-foot thick masonry walls. See, this is the oldest building you'll probably see today. It was built in 1898 as the North American cold storage warehouse, refrigerated for 70 years, meaning before Harry could punch condo windows, he had to defrost for 6 months and take out 500 truckloads of ammonia, brine, pork, and horsehair insulation. Wonderful insulation, horsehair, if your horse would give it up. And then in 1988, inspired by fishermen's cottages in Amsterdam, Harry Weese does a postmodern twist for the 4 townhomes known as the River Cottages. Third one sold in 2015 for $2.25 million for maybe 4,500 square feet of space, but you're right on the river. The nautical theme comes about because Harry Weese was an architect and a sailor who truly understood the river when he said, "Water is a magnet, it draws people to it." Perhaps Harry Weese understood the psychologist Carl Jung, that we humans, Spock, have an archetype in the brain longing for the sea, the great blue, the azure. And if you don't have an ocean nearby, stick around Chicago with me a while longer. The day may come for you as it came for me when you awaken this city singing, "A river is enough, a river is enough, a river is enough." Well, as Jed Clampett of the Beverly Hillbillies might say, dog is given. That's a lot of information. I think we need to take a little break. Go see Michaela, your bartender, have a drink. We'll turn the boat around and we'll head south where the tall buildings live instead of residential. I'm going to come off the mic, so if you have any questions about anything we've seen so far, I'll take them.